Hello, everyone. Welcome to the final session of the 2022 Future of Work series hosted by Kettle. I'm going to wait for you all to cry and moan and show sad faces. We'll give everyone a minute to funnel into the room, and we'll get started very shortly. We are going to record, and we were going to share the slides and recording after the presentation to everyone who registered over email. So this is the final panel on the future of work, and we're going to focus this week on the human in human resources, what modern HR will look like in 2022. Over the last 3 weeks, we've covered promoting employee engagement in the modern workplace, the office as a purpose-driven destination, and last week, winning in the Great Resignation, working for jerks versus enlightened management. All of the recordings are available on the Kettle YouTube channel, and we will make this one available as well. In this discussion, our panelists will focus on what will HR look like in 2022. Please add your questions to the chat Q&A, and we'll address them later in the session. Our presentation today will be given by Christine, who has over 18 years of dynamic experience in the HR and consulting space. She's a founding pioneer on the HR puzzle team and is helping clients navigate through the rapidly changing employer and employee environment. She's helped hundreds of clients manage their HR needs by understanding their business goals and connecting their goals to their people strategies. So we'll get started with introductions, and I want to do it a little bit differently this time since our final session. So I'm sure you all heard the saying, there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. So let's start with some statistics. In a November 2021 survey conducted by the Future Forum, they reported 95% of those surveys wanted flexible hours, over 78% who wanted flexible locations. So we've covered this topic of flexibility a lot in the last few weeks. So while you introduce yourselves, please share in your opinion, what does flexibility mean? And is there a better way to research and analyze the needs for flexibility? Tony and Brian, I feel like this is a softball for you guys. So why don't you guys kick it off and pass the baton to Nick and Noah. And Christine.
Hey, everybody. I am Tony Carnesi, the first half of the doobies. What you need to do is my forte, the policies, the procedures, the structures, the report cards. I am a recovering CPA. I love to see those numbers get better for our clients. Flex, what does it mean? It means what your employees need and how well your employees can serve your customers without missing out on anything. That's what flexibility means in your workplace. Ask your employees, make sure the customers are served. Brian?
And I'm Brian Gorman. I am the B side of the Doobie Associates. I'm about how you need to show up in order to be successful in your business. So very much what Christine is going to be talking about, becoming that human in human resources, becoming that human in manager, in business owner, and leader that will lead your company to success. Flexibility, I'm very much aligned with Tony, not surprisingly. There's the needs of your clients, the needs of your business, and the needs of your employees. And flexibility is about finding how to make all of those work together so that it's a win-win-win. And I will pass the baton on to Noah.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Joseph, for moderating. Thank the panel for participating, Brenda for the work she's done, and all the participants attending today. My name is Noah Pusey. I'm the CEO and president of Ripple Analytics. We're changing the face of how companies assess, develop, and manage their people, their humans. We take data, we analyze it, crunch it, and show leaders trends within the organization. Getting rid of the annual review and replacing it with something meaningful. Flexibility to me, I think, probably can be summed up by understanding as enlightened leaders that there is need to change and modify the traditional approach to modern realities. And I think flexibility goes across all fronts. It's not just flexible workspaces, it's flexible approaches to work hours, to how work is performed, and pivoting with the times. No one expected this 22 months ago, but if you didn't recognize the importance of it, then you played the ostrich game in management, and that's a horrible thing to do. Get your head out of the sand. Looking forward to Christine's presentation today. Nick, on to you.
Hey everybody, I'm Nick, CEO, co-founder of Kettle. We help people get their heads out of the sand when it comes to all things hybrid work. It's a complex set of problems. We've developed software that's designed to help leaders and employees, specifically on the team level, really work together to find the right new balance of flexibility. I think the cool thing about flexibility is that we've all tasted this over the last couple of years and we've all enjoyed the upside of it, but at the same time, there needs to be some transparency and some kind of wayfinding through flexible work to enable kind of teams and individuals and organizations as a whole to really put the pieces back together successfully. So we're here to help. Yes, tapping you in, Christine.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yes, thank you to Joseph for moderating today and Brenda and all the panelists. I'm extremely happy to be wrapping up our series and it's been such a great conversation. Hopefully we'll weave a lot of what we've been discussing recently into what modern HR looks like. So just a little bit about Puzzle, we are a forward-thinking HR services organization. So what we try to do is align the business goals with the employer's greatest assets, the employees. We are able to recommend, support, and facilitate technology solutions, many like we've discussed in this series. And then we help analyze that data to drive decisions. And of course, we are supporting the human component in human resources as well. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start off with a little bit of a poll. And I'm curious to see how your employer, how your business, how your team has viewed human resources in the past. So Joseph, if we can throw up that poll, that would be great.
There you go. Let me know when you want to share your slides.
All right, after this poll time, we can go ahead and start the sharing.
All right, the results are coming in. Give it another minute.
We're going to talk about a little bit of our history, why we're here, and then what a lot of very smart people are saying HR will look like in the future. So I think this will give us a good idea of where some of the organizations might have been. All right.
Okay,
Where are we doing there?
I'm going to show you the results.
Okay. So it's interesting, right? So we have a 33% as a strategic partner in the leadership team and in business operations. And I hope after this call, this goes to 100% for this webinar. We have 24%, right? Necessary for compliance and risk mitigation, totally expected. Not surprised to see the 33% that HR is administrative and clerical. And 10%, what HR department are you speaking of? And what's interesting, right, is nobody answered a revenue driver. So we're gonna talk a little bit about how HR is going to transform over the next few years. So not surprised by the results of the poll. And again, hopefully as we go through this, you'll start to see what HR is going to evolve to. So Joseph, we can go to the slide where we talk about traditional views of HR, and we just covered this a lot in our poll, right? So traditional views, when I started in the industry, everybody was worried about compliance, right? Everybody was worried about, am I understanding city, state, and federal labor law? If I fire somebody, am I doing it appropriately, right? We also know that HR traditionally in the past has been the George Clooney's, up in the air, and if HR entered the room, somebody was getting terminated. It was never a good feeling to be in the presence of human resources. It was always deemed to be a negative thing. And then employers, would perceive HR to be just the complaint box for the employees. And then as we saw in the poll, right, a third of the attendees on the call, administrative and clerical. often the HR person is the administrative guru that runs the entire organization, from making sure that there's enough seats for those new employees all the way through, passing important messages to people. So HR has often been lumped in that administrative clerical department. Really HR is changing, and how HR will function within a business is going to become extremely different from where we were to where we're going. So some thoughts on what modern HR looks like. And it's interesting because I did a lot of research and always do research, but one of the recent studies about the trends of 2022 for HR professionals, Gartner is basically saying that there are two key factors for modern HR. They are going to improve operational excellence, and they're going to execute business transformation. And really, the entire discussion that we've been having during this seminar are related to those two specific goals that HR leaders are having to accomplish this year, right? We believe that HR can be transformational within businesses. And when it goes from something you feel that you're obligated to do, push that paper, move that employee through onboarding, make sure you're compliant, to something that the organization is embracing and is excited about, that's where we get transformational HR. And that's where HR drives business transformations, it improves operational excellence, and it will drive results to the bottom line. So HR is going to look a lot different than what it has in the past. When we look at all of the aspects to HR, we can move to the next slide, Joseph. There are so many areas of complexity within HR. HR is no longer just about one component, and it's almost impossible for a HR department of one to manage everything within an organization. So we do still have to be considerate of compliance, right? And compliance is about 30% of the focus of organizations, but it's not about the old compliance. It's about compliance with COVID safety protocols. It's about compliance with equity. It's about compliance with some of the new employee benefit regulations that are coming out in the marketplace today, like mandated retirement benefits. So we still have to monitor compliance, but then you have employee well-being, you have new talent strategy. So you have all of these pieces to the HR puzzle. And what we are really looking at is one person can't handle all of these competencies, and organizations really need to lean on a team of professionals in order to be able to accomplish this. Another interesting connotation of HR used to be in the past, right, where it was an area of opportunity to reduce costs. And HR was viewed only as a cost center and not adding any money, any revenue to the bottom line, not adding any real money to the organization. That has flipped. We are seeing a ton of studies that spend for development of employees, spend on technology has increased during 2021 and will continue to increase. And that's because, as you see in the slide, very simply, there are tons of components to the HR puzzle that exists today. We're going to talk a little bit about what's driving some of this change. And some of this change we've talked a lot about during this webinar. The pandemic has sped up many of the shifts that were predicted to come in the near future in the late 2020s. We knew we were moving to a gig environment. We knew we were moving to hybrid environments, but it just came a lot quicker than what anybody could have ever anticipated. We still see today many businesses struggling with the great shift and the great resignation. And as one of my clients called it, right, the great attraction, because they're trying to refocus the mindset of what's happening today. Going with trend, as we talked about in the past, 4.3 million people quit their jobs in December. The entire second half of 2021, we had 4 million plus employees leave their jobs and quit their jobs. And if we look at the statistics today, there are 10.9 million job openings today. That's 1.7 job openings for every single person that's unemployed. So what does this mean? There means that there is an entire labor shortage. Regardless of what would have happened with the pandemic, there is a labor shortage today. We don't have enough bodies. We don't have enough talent in the marketplace. So as we talk about what modern HR looks like, it's going to address how do we mitigate this shortage of labor in the workforce today. It does, experts do say that the shortage is going to continually shrink, but we're never going to get to a place where we have an excess of an excess of people and talent for the jobs that are going to be created. One thing that we haven't been talking about is AI and automation and the digital world of the environment that we work in today. It is estimated that we are going to have a surge in automation, right, when it comes to processes and procedures. We are going to need to have new skill sets in the work environment. When we look at automation, there's going to be 93 million jobs that are out of the workforce, but 133 million jobs are going to be created in the workforce. So again, we're thinking about what's going to be needed from an HR perspective, and that's going to be talent, education, new skill sets, new leadership. So how does HR drive bottom line results in this new environment? With flexibility, which is the question that we started off this conversation with, and what's been driving a lot of this discussion. Redefining what talent looks like and how we manage talent. It's going to be education, development, and leadership. We are going to need to embrace technology in order to keep up with the times. DEI is a big factor for what modern HR is going to implement as we continue to move forward. And what this all comes down to employee well-being. So when we take a look at flexibility, I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide because we've been doing a lot of discussion, and I'm sure some of the questions that we have will come down to this topic. Actually, Joseph, we can move one slide ahead. I was one slide ahead of you. I apologize. There we go. Fundamentally, right, we're never going back to work the way we were. It's just not going to happen, right? It's just, there's going to be a change regardless of what industry you're in. Even if you're in manufacturing or construction, there are safety protocols that we need to follow today. So there's just a fundamental change. Organizations are going to need to be creative in order to drive this flexibility in the office environment and in the non-office environment, right? Those construction sites. We're not only talking about flexibility. Somebody, I forgot at the beginning, mentioned it, right? It's not just about hybrid and remote strategies, but it is about time off policies. It's about your scheduling policies. It's about holiday time and personal appointment time. So there's a flexibility shift that's occurring in many aspects, not just a virtual and a hybrid environment and coming to the office. And even if you are an employer that demands and needs employees to be in their seats or on the floor or at the site, there are ways that you can embrace flexibility within your scheduling and your workforce to help meet the needs of what the employees want. So at the end of the day, by creating a flexible work environment, you are going to help attract some of that sparse talent pool that you need to get in order to continue to move your business forward, right? If we don't have talent, we don't have a business because nobody can perform the work. Other considerations as we talk about flexibility, right? Leaders need to understand financial considerations. That's for both, again, safety parameters as well as real estate parameters. And then we talk about remote and hybrid and what technology is going to look like for that. How do we collaborate and how do we connect? And again, we've talked a lot with Nick in managing the workforce with the time, the space, and the people. And there's tools out there to help us do this. There's tools out there to help teams collaborate and connect. There's other software out there as well. We're going to look at management, right? As we create flexibility, there's going to be an entire shift of leadership in management and develop that's going to need to happen. I talk a little bit about this in the education slide as well. And I think you'll see through all of these slides, there's an intermingling. So where HR used to work in a silo and a lot of departments worked in a silo, we are mixing across the board for a lot of different business functions and business operations. So managing the workforce, we talked a little bit about trusting and how do you build these trusted relationships in these flexible environments? How do managers lead through these flexible environments? How do we create trust within these flexible environments, right? So as we look at HR's role, it's going to be evaluating all of these scenarios in order to create a flexible work environment. And then it's going to be training managers and training employees on how to really be productive in these environments. And it's actually interesting. I was having this conversation before as I was looking for some research on hybrid and remote statistics that were newer. The 4-day work week that our good friends Tony and Brian keep discussing, actually within reach. And there's studies showing that employers are looking at this to get ahead of what that hybrid and work virtual environment will be, because a lot of people are offering a hybrid or remote work environment. So what's next? That 4-day work week. So we're going to continue to see trends and we're going to continue to see changes. But I just think it's interesting that all of these conversations are coming full circle today. So the next area that we're going to look at is talent, right? And there's a lot of things surrounding talent, but I'm just going to highlight a few things with 2 top things, right? How do we get talent? So we talk about the human and human resources, talent acquisition. If you do not have technology in place, you're not going to be able to attract that talent. You do need to use technology for an applicant tracking. AI is going to be imperative for helping you speed up that process as well. So talent acquisition strategy is going to be changing. You need to be quick and effective when you're trying to recruit. You need to make sure that your message is clear. You need to advertise why employees want to be with you. And every single person that comes in contact with that potential candidate needs to be aligned with what the mission is of your organization, what the goals are, and everybody needs to be trained on how to do that. So as we talk about managing talent and trying to garner some of that tight talent pool that we have today, the talent acquisition strategy is as imperative, where we're trying to compete in this environment. It's fierce. It's fierce out there. It's not a nicey nice game anymore. And employers, unfortunately, need to, they're not in the driver's seat anymore. We have the employees in the driver's seat today when it comes to the talent. So making sure everybody's aligned, and HR is going to be responsible for making sure that that experience from beginning to engagement is what the employee expects and wants. Now, another thing when we talk about talent, and again, these all intertwine, when we talk about talent management strategy, we're going to see a huge shift in the way that leaders engage their employees, the way that employees are expected to perform. We want to talk about employee engagement during the talent management strategy. And Noah brought up a ton of great points in his presentation about the cost of disengagement. Right. So as we look at management talent strategies, employee engagement is going to be critical. And it's going to be critical to improve, again, your ROI with your employees, making sure that they're productive. We also want to use employee engagement and get feedback from employees to make some of these decisions. We are talking about a lot of change on this webinar today and what modern HR is going to look like. Your organization doesn't need to do it all to be successful. You might need to pick one or two things from these topics that we've discussed to implement to help move you forward. And what's the best way to do that? To pulse your employees and see where they need you the most, to listen to your employees, right? And then your HR team can help analyze that data and figure out what's the top priority for your organization to continue to move forward within your HR organization. One thing that I think is really interesting, and this again parlays into a lot of different things, including management and leadership, skills-based performance is going to become an extremely important topic, right? I mean, I cannot tell you how many businesses, did you produce X? Did you sell X? Did you make number of widgets? Did you make number of cold calls? And that's what performance is based off of. Well, you know what we're finding is skills-based performance management is much more impactful and effective in regards to performance management. And what this allows us to do is it allows us to share skills throughout the entire organization. So as we're redefining and realigning what new jobs are going to look like, because remember, we have millions of jobs being displaced because of automation, right? And we have 133 million new jobs that are going to be created. In order to fill those new created jobs, we're not going to necessarily have the entire talent pool that we need in the marketplace. So we're going to need to know what skills our employees possess to be able to move them into these other positions within organizations as well. And skill-based assessment should really be brought into the talent acquisition strategy all the way through management. And let's think about it. If you have an employee that's great culturally, they're motivated, they're enthusiastic, but perhaps they are not the best cold caller, right, in your organization. Maybe that just gets them a little anxious. They might not be performing at their current job today, but they might be excellent at customer service, right? So when we start to evaluate skills versus just performance, we open up our own internal talent pool and can place the best people within those jobs. So again, we're talking a lot about what modern HR looks like. This is a shift from the traditional performance management. All right, we're going exactly education, development, and leadership. I think this is something that we're all passionate here about, right? Continuous learning needs to be ingrained in organizations and cultures. It's actually one of Puzzle's key core values. And we look at this, and I'll keep going back to where we're heading, right? Jobs being lost, new jobs being created. If we don't have a continuous learning environment, then we're going to be in a pretty terrible position when it comes to the talent pool and competitiveness in the marketplace. Skills-based talent management, we just talked a little bit about that, but we're going to need to educate and train our leaders on how to perform these types of skills-based assessments. We are finding that employees want the ability to develop, not just vertically, right? What's your career path? Where do you see yourself? Do you want to be a manager? Do you want to be a VP? Do you want to be a leader? Traditional thinking when it comes to development of employees is, vertical. We're just going upwards. We're seeing today that there is a desire to be lateral. Maybe I am the manager of client relations today, but I really would love to get into technology. Train me on that technology skill set, right? Let me move laterally as much as you promoted me vertically, because not everybody's meant to be a leader, nor does everybody want to be a leader. There is definitely a deficit in leadership skills, and HR professionals in many studies are worried about the ability to find future leaders right now in current organizations and to tap into that. So it is really important for HR to develop a leadership program for those that are interested. And again, we go more towards the skill set. We have this perception that the best salesperson, the best widget maker, the fastest producer should be the one that manages the next team. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they have the skills or the desire to do so. I think we've talked a lot about that during our conversations these past few weeks as well. It's going to come into the competency, it's going to come into the bandwidth, and it's going to come into the desire to lead a team. So as we talk about developing the organization, it's important to look at what opportunity you have for leadership development as well. And, I love the Enlightened Leaders discussion we had last week. This is going to continue to evolve, continuing to help leaders understand empathy versus apathy, right? We had some of that discussion. Continuing to help leaders manage in these environments and have productive conversations. So, truly believe that learning and development is going to be critical in making sure that the leadership team is set up for success within the modern workforce. Again, is critical to the survival of an organization. Really quick, as we talk about this and where we're shifting, I was having a conversation the other day with one of my clients and talking about where we went to college and degrees that we got. And, it came to be where my client's university is actually no longer in business. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. You don't hear of universities going out of business. He's like, they never got online. They didn't do marketing. They didn't have online courses. You can even register online. You had to go in person. So what happens? They fell by the wayside and the university closed down. And that's why continuous learning, continuous development, and great leadership is going to be critical to organizations moving forward. And HR is going to play a key role in setting all of that up. And, when we look at this, we've talked about Kettle's opportunity, right, to help organizations. We talked about Ripple. IT and HR are going to have to work together simultaneously. IT and HR traditionally have been in their silos, right? They are going to impact every business organization across the board as we continue to move forward. Everything from understanding cybersecurity for those employers that do have a hybrid remote work environment, to creating employee-focused experience from application. We talked about, right, speed when we're hiring a candidate, all the way through their team member experience and collaboration. IT is going to need to help HR find solutions to get data so that decisions can be made. And of course, they're going to need to streamline and create efficiencies as we move in this environment. So we see two departments in organizations that are traditionally siloed and have their own operating systems coming together to partner to move the organization forward, and are really going to intersect with every single business segment in the organization. It's really interesting. There's new positions being cultivated that are actually HRIT, right? So to make sure that there's an employee forward-facing IT infrastructure in the business. And then we're going to talk lastly about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I did want to, highlight this. There's multiple ways to implement DEI programs, but, we take a look at why this is an initiative. There's 35% of HR leaders across the board are prioritizing DEI for 2022. And we look at the gaps that still exist from a C-suite perspective. There's only 29% in leadership of women, and then only 17% with racial minorities. And we talked about the pay gaps and inequality with women and racial minorities on these webinars as well. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. But I think people, we need to kind of start where we are today. And I think a lot of businesses get anxious with the DEI conversation. So what really is DEI, right? We're just break it down. Diversity is going to be the presence of notable differences, right, in your settings. We talk about equity, and equity is the process of ensuring that programs and approaches are impartial. And then we talk about inclusion, and it's the immersion, right? It's ensuring that everybody feels that they belong. And I think we use this analogy, right? Equity is being invited to the dance, inclusion is being asked to dance at the dance. So, we look at DEI being a critical component of, HR moving forward in business cultures. And by creating DEI programs, you tap into a whole new talent pool. You stretch your thinking about, areas maybe you wouldn't have gone from a talent acquisition perspective. We talked about the desire for employees to want to have purpose and connection to their organizations, right? We're going to have an equitable and inclusive organization in order to attract that talent when they want to have their purpose and connection. And employers and employees want to bring their whole selves to work today. We don't want to have to hide anymore from a whole self perspective. And I think as we went through the pandemic, we saw a lot of shifts, and there's going to be a tremendous amount of data coming out of the pandemic in regards to unconscious bias. And if we develop these programs and the culture embraces them, you'll see that your talent pool is going to expand, your retention is going to expand, your engagement is going to expand. And then we think about diversity and thought, right? We are going through these major shifts of business, of life, right? The old way of thinking we're seeing in every aspect is no longer going to work for businesses. So by creating a diverse equity, a DEI program, in your leadership, you're going to get diversity in thought. And then one of the things that I talk to about with HR leaders is, as we're moving in this flexible work environment, believe it or not, equity is a real big conversation, especially if you offer flexible environments. Perhaps you have somebody that can't make it to the office because they have childcare needs or mobility needs, but then you have somebody going to the office every other day. So as we develop these flexible work environments, we need to ensure that we have equity, right? We're considering equity and what does this mean? And I'll leave you with one last thought on DEI. Studies do show that by increasing the diversity of your leadership team, it leads to more and better innovation, and it does improve financial performance. Companies that have diverse management teams have 19% higher revenues due to innovation than those teams that do not. So, right now we are experiencing a moment in history where a lot is changing, and it's a really unique time to be in business and to be in HR. And I think everybody that's attending here will agree. And I think everybody on the panel as well. So it's just what an incredible time. And then at the end of the day, what we're talking about is employee well-being. This all comes back to employee well-being, right? We're talking about well-being in a mental state for employees. We're talking about social, we're talking about physical, we're talking about career building. So HR, we know, will be focusing a lot on how to bring programs to the employees that will just focus more on just the 401k and healthcare. Those are kind of, everybody expects those benefits today. Everybody wants those benefits. But when we talk about the whole, we're really looking at a totality of well-being for employees. And again, we talk about the talent pool, we talk about changes and shifts, all of these facets, all of these avenues. And this is just scratching the surface on what modern HR will look like. But I think some key components for some takeaways for some of the people that are attending today. So as we digress and as we talk, I'm curious, we can do the poll if you would like now, Joseph. If we could, what I would like to hear is we, at the beginning, talked about what HR looks like. I'd love to hear from this presentation what you might bring back to the table to focus on in 2022. All right, are we getting answers in, Joseph?
Yeah, we are. Just give it another 10 or seconds or so. Let people drop in their notes.
Great. I know it's a lot. I threw a lot out about what modern HR looks like, right? But it all comes back to the technology piece, right? Because we know that that's going to drive a lot of things. It's going to drive new processes. but we talked a lot about the human component and what leaders and management need to do and HR needs to do to keep that and keep the business moving. All right. Love it. So 50% education, leadership, and development. 3, talent, 13% on talent, 13% on employee well-being. Pretty good mix. And I'm glad everybody took at least one little piece away. So that's awesome. And I think, you know, the education, leadership, and development piece pertains a lot to what we've been discussing on the panel these past few weeks. So great.
Excellent. A lot to think about there, Christine.
And I kept it high level too.
Oh, I know. As you're going through, I'm like, oh, each of these slides could be a session in and of themselves. So once again, I invite anyone who has questions to drop them in the chat or the Q&A. We did get a couple of questions prior to the event launch. So this question's from Carl. It's a bit of a long question, so I'm going to read it. And then I think everyone could probably take a shot at this question. So here you go. Ready? In this pandemic era, and workers leaving their jobs willingly to reassess their lives, do you see a need for a SaaS HR platform that's architected to measure team cohesion by merging pre-hiring and post-hiring processes while mapping personality to performance to alleviate disengaged employees in the workplace? So I think this question touches on almost everything someone here has spoken about. So why don't we start with, who wants to start? Just give Christine a minute to catch her breath.
I'll start if you want.
Go for it.
It is by far the longest question we've had in our board
they win a prize, no
presentation
question.
series. I think, yes. I mean, I think we all have businesses that are tied to the realities of addressing all of those needs. And there are other businesses out there, and there will be new businesses to address the importance of, I'll take a couple of the points, the importance of matching personality with skill sets. I mean, you can even take a deeper dive in terms of a lot of organizations hold their employees to a standard when they don't even give the employee a job description. They don't have a set of expectations. So how can you fail something you didn't know you're supposed to do? And then in terms of avoiding disengagement, I mean, I talked about the ROI, Nick talked about the ROI, $350 to $500 billion lost by American companies because of disengagement. So yes, there's definitely a need, and the solutions exist. You just have to look for them.
If I can jump in on this,
Go for it, Brian.
Absolutely. Whether there's a technology need, there is certainly a management need to address disengagement because it's contagious. Do you want to go to a workplace where you're really passionate about the work, and whether it's a physical or virtual workplace, and those around you couldn't care less? Or do you want to go to a workplace where your coworkers are as passionate about doing the work as you are? So again, I'm not a technologist. I'm guessing that such a technology either exists or could be developed. The challenge, with or without the technology, is making the hard decisions about whether or not disengagement is an acceptable part of your organization's culture.
Anyone else want to jump in on this question? Yeah, go for it.
Being a technologist, representing the technology segment, I think the way that I look at it is you've got flexible work, hybrid work, whatever you want to call this new 4-day work week, like Brian and Tony are cooking on. It's going to introduce a new dimension in the work system. 9-to-5 was the Industrial Revolution construct, and that's just the way it was, and it was pretty much constant unless you were a remote company. So now that there's flexibility as another variable, I think it'll touch on performance, engagement, culture, and all sorts of other outcomes that, or values that are important in the work system. So I think it's just one of the key things. It's really just gathering the data through Noah's platform or our platform or others that are out there, so that over time, as this progression kind of unfolds on itself, there's a data story that can help drive decisions moving forward.
Great. So Christine, you mentioned business transformation during your presentation. Typically, that's something, companies go hire one of these big fancy firms, pay them hundreds of thousands of dollars, for an engagement, get a bunch of consultants to sit around, talk about what does it mean. Who should be involved in that?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually, yeah, thank you for the question. That's actually one of the reasons why we started Puzzle was, right, you do have these amazing consultants that are out there in the world today, but there's no way that the middle market business, American business, can take advantage of those services, right? So we created a Puzzle from an HR perspective, but we are business people with an HR focus, right? So we definitely can help when it comes to all of this HR transformation, evaluating goals and being strategic. And that was our initial mission, right? To bring down those high level consulting services to the mid-level market space. We've transformed a little bit and added some admin stuff because, listen, everybody needs a little bit of help from admin, but you should really have your key stakeholders involved, right? So it should be your CFO, your CEO, anybody who's making decisions need to be involved in those conversations. Any of your trusted business advisors, you might want to pull in some of your legal team. You might want to pull in some of your, your financial team. There's a lot of outsourced professionals out there today. Even if your organization doesn't have a full-time CFO, there are so many managed services that even at a 40, 50, 100, 200 person company, if you don't have the need nor the financial resources to have all of this talent in your organization, look at managed services. But when you're making changes and you're looking at business transformation, make sure you have legal, make sure you have financial, make sure you have HR, and make sure you have the key stakeholders that are going to push that information down and believe in that mission. If your key stakeholders don't believe in what the transformation is, you might as well not even move forward with that.
Nick, I know we've spoken to a lot of people over time. Anyone else you think should be at that table?
Well, I think the technology function, per Christine's kind of, people and technology are starting to fuse. I think that's we're learning that firsthand. They're no longer in silos, and I think that at least from our standpoint, it is a cross-functional impact and decision-making process because it proliferates throughout the entire organization. So definitely tech would be included there too.
Christine, you also talked about talent in your talent acquisition, obviously the Great Resignation, we covered that in detail. I want to take it a step before they even get into the company. It's a step of the process where I think most people forget about: candidate experience. Mm-hmm. So people are no longer coming into an office to interview. So who wants to address the candidate experience, in this Great Resignation or Great Reorganization or whatever phrase you want to use?
Yeah. I think going back to Nick's point, right, and that's why I put the slide. HR and IT are coming together, right? I mean, never before. I have a client that I'm working with because their talent acquisition today does not allow them to text to chat their candidates, right, or remind them via text. They're no longer going to be moving forward with that applicant tracking system. So I think that candidate experience and what employees are looking for is extremely important from both a tech perspective, but then again, a message management system, and making sure that every person that touches that candidate is on board with the mission. Employee resource groups are also going to become, I think, critical as we continue to move forward within the candidate experience, to let people know that they can be connected to the mission and bring their whole selves. But it's really interesting what we're seeing in the talent space. It's the candidate experience is going to make or break you as far as acquiring the tight talent pool in your organization.
It's also often overlooked, right? Because people are just, they'll come, they want the job, they'll come. Noah, I want to ask you a question. We're talking about the future here.
Yeah.
What are 3 metrics an HR leader needs to know at any moment in time?
Wow. 3 important metrics.
You can give me 2 if it's easier, but yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a ton, but I would say, human interaction, because that's going to be a different thing in the future. It's a different thing now. It's not 9 to 5, 5 days a week, where you see your colleagues constantly, know how you impact them, because you can tell by the expressions on their face even. So adapting to understand that you have to track your employee human interaction. I think it's all metrics in terms of comparing. The second would be revenue. Generally you're in business to find a profit source. So if you track the revenue during this hybrid flexibility experience and see what works and what doesn't work. And then employee productivity. We're big fans of engagement, and engaged employees are more productive. I mean, it's not the kumbaya stuff, it's actual fact. We 18% more productivity in sales positions, 14% more productivity in manufacturing positions. Engagement's important. And we already talked about the money you lose for disengagement. Promoting engagement also promotes culture. So those would be the three metrics I would stress.
Cool. I'll toss this one up to everyone. We've talked about engagement a lot. So the audience can leave with a couple of real meaningful, tactical piece of advice. What's a question you think everyone should be asking their employees?
Can I just throw in one thing that I also like to measure? I just want to dovetail off of what Noah said.
Go for it.
Attitude and aptitude. Their skills, but what is their attitude and what is the aptitude, the willingness to learn something new? So I just wanted to get that in there before we moved on to the next area.
Do you have a question you think people should be thinking about since you had the mic?
I think, a great question is, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? And I'm going to steal one from my partner, Brian. What do you do like breathing? What comes so naturally to you that you don't even think about it? Sorry, Brian, I had to steal that one because I wasn't sure if you were going to say it.
I think an important question to ask, kind of following up on Tony's 5-year question, is where do you see yourself at 6 months, and where do you see yourself in a year? As the last 2 years have shown, it's been a long 2 years. So maybe getting that short-term insight in terms of where a candidate or an employee, and that's a good question for a candidate, and it's also a good question for your already hired employees, because it should be an ongoing discussion.
Excellent. So we're running a little short on time, but I can ask you guys questions all afternoon here. Go for it, Brian.
If I can just add to that, what can I as a manager do to more successfully help you succeed?
That's always a good question. I have more questions. We're not calling it over just yet, but I'm calling them down a little. Brian, you published something this week about enlightened leaders. Can you share a highlight or two from your recent article about managing expectations in a flexible work environment?
I'm not sure what to pull out of it.
You wrote it. I read it. You
Joseph, which article are you referring
the
to?
LinkedIn post you put up a couple of days ago.
A couple of days ago.
Yeah.
So the LinkedIn post that I put up a couple of days ago really is about some key actions that every manager, whether you're the CEO of a global organization or you've got one employee, what you should be doing in your interaction with your employees in order to get the best out of them and give them the best experience. And I think we've talked about a lot of this in this whole series, but before you even hire somebody in that recruitment process, what gets them up and to work in the morning? Can you align what you need with what they're seeking? How do they want to be communicated with? This is particularly true, and I didn't include this in the article. Are they text communicators? I've got a 29-year-old son. I would pick up the phone. He texts.
At least he texts.
What are the styles of communication that your employees want? How fully do they want you to be engaged, Christine talked about the value of employee resource groups and bringing your whole self to work. What do I have to do as a manager to allow my employees to bring their whole selves to work? And for some, that means a whole lot of themselves. And for some, it means not very much at all. And I need to know that, and I need to be comfortable with accepting that. So those are a few things, Joseph.
Appreciate it. For those who don't follow Brian, you should sign up for his newsletter. There you go. Free promotion. Nick, choice, coordination, policies. What's most important in making this whole flexible thing work and keeping everyone happy? We started with, some want space, some want hours. Where do you think it is? Who sets the rules?
Well, I think it's a meet in the middle kind of situation where you have to carve out enough time for teams to have the ability to collaborate synchronously in co-located fashion, meaning sometime in the office, sometime plugged in together so we can do this in real time. But the concept of choice is a new one, and it's a fascinating one. And I think we're all demanding as humans more choice, and the term agency comes up a lot. Agency over how we, what time we give to work. And I think the concept of time is now on the table in a new way that it never was before. And I think that's one of the coolest aspects of the future as it relates to flexibility is 4-hour work week. You get a third weekend day. That sounds pretty great. I'd take that. The ability to take your kid to school in the morning and not have to be plugged in, the ability to exercise every day if that's what you want to do. I think we've all gotten that time back, and it relates to choice, but choice is only as good as visibility, transparency, and organization can support. So it's how do you balance people valuing their time differently and having choice with what the team or the organization needs in terms of how to get the job done. So to me, that's where the rubber is going to meet the road.
I appreciate that. So we're down to our last 6 minutes of the last month plus. So we've covered a ton in the last month. I want you each to, give your final parting thought. If there's one idea that everyone would take away from you and your thoughts and your presentation, let's do that. And I'm going to actually put up on the screen everyone's contact information. So as you're speaking, they'll be able to follow you on LinkedIn and get in touch. So I think we're going to start with Brian. So give me 1 second here, and you can think about it for 1 second.
I guess my final thought is there's a whole lot of thought here. Go back and watch these videos again, because you're listening to people who are really in touch with what's going on and with the leading edge thinking about how to move through this. One way or another, you're going to get through this to someplace. It's the people now who are paying attention to all of these dynamics and figuring out how to negotiate it through them that are going to come out on top.
Thank you, sir. Tony.
Quickly, I just want to respond to Zara, who just said something about meetings. And one of our podcast guests said it very, very succinctly. No agenda, no attenda. That's the first place you should work towards a 4-day work week. We talked about earlier today, if you're asking the right questions, you'll get the right answers and you'll get the information you need. The key is stop, close your mouth, and listen to the answers. They will come to you if you ask the right questions. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Sir Nick.
Yeah, I think the term empathy comes up. It's come up on every single one of our webinars. I think it's an important value to embrace with this much change. And I also think, leverage resources like the folks that are on this panel, because it's a lot of work. And Christine laid out a massive amount of stuff that's changing and important elements to consider. And there are resources available. And even as thought partners, we're happy to be a resource to anyone that's out there looking to get started.
Mr. Noah.
Yeah, if there's one core message, I believe it went through all 4 presentations. It's technology, embrace it, don't fight it, and different generational workforce attitudes toward technology. A 72-year-old CEO of a company is going to look at technology a lot different than a 23-year-old recent hire. Appreciate the fact that there's going to be generational differences within your workforce, and embrace that and address it, and use technology to make your lives, your professional lives and personal lives, easier. And that's what we all offer. We offer a solution to implement, to cure a pain point, and give you more time to do what you formed your company to do. And that's build whatever, provide whatever services, etc. But technology, embrace it.
Christine, final word.
No, there we go. I was like, oh no, I can't go off mute. I think to everybody's point, I think the empathy conversation, the technology conversation, but always surround yourself as a leader with people who are better than you, right? And I don't mean that, but surround yourself with different thought leaders, surround yourself with different points of view. I think the more that you can surround yourself with people who are better than you, will make your business continue to grow. It'll continue to stretch you. Utilize resources. As Nick said, there are a ton of resources out there. You might be a smaller organization. You can plug into the best of the best with managed services, fractional type services. There's a lot of information out there. You don't have to know it all, but rely on resources and experts that do, and plug those assets into your organization. And then I think, leadership development is going to continue to evolve. Employee engagement is going to continue to evolve. We might make decisions today that make sense for today, and in 6 months, it's not going to make sense, and it's okay. This is a fluid environment, and I think that is one thing that businesses are going to have to get used to is change. It's the only thing that's really constant, right? And I think we're seeing that more so in business than ever. Yeah, so I mean, it's leverage resources. Don't be afraid of change. Don't be afraid of failing, and reach out to any of us. Should anybody have any questions, we'd be more than happy to help.
Thank you, Christine, for everything today. So final minute. It's been a lot of fun moderating and getting to know all you guys and working with you on this. I want to thank you all for your efforts and time. For the attendees and everyone who joined us, appreciate them for tuning in. Brenda, for your assistance on everything we've done in the back end. Continue to look out for emails from all of us for future events, and there'll be more coming as the world continues to evolve. Appreciate everyone. We'll send the email out with everyone's contacts again and the recording, etc. So have a great day. Thank you all, and see you on the next webinar.
Thanks for moderating,
Thanks,
Joseph and Brenda. Thank you.
Great
Guys.
job.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
This is beautiful.
Panelists.
Thank you to all.
Have a great day, everyone.